effort and hard work and staying consistent. Honestly, none of the things that someone pulled me aside and told me were important when I was younger. That is what really fired me up. And then I think there was some fear in there too. Like, I didn't grow up with money by any means. Having a team, helping other people succeed, that really excited me. And I knew at the bottom of my heart, if I didn't do it, I would be filled with regret.
Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Shawn Fitzgerald. Shawn, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I know I've been waiting to be on this pod for a while, so I'm glad we get to reconnect here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. I mean, we're not going to talk about where you're located or where you're from. We're just going to skip over that. Those who want to read your bio are more than welcome to, but let's just say it's not the 5 boroughs of New York City. It's someplace near the 5 boroughs of New York City. A lot of wannabe New York City and New York people live there and associate with there, but whatever island you're from, we're willing to accept it anyway.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm about an hour out from Aaron.
You know what? By the way, great coffee. We when I came to see you, we had great coffee. So it was a beautiful day. So we like that. We got to do that again.
100%.
Shawn, your background, and I know it well, is one of basically like hustle from day one, if possible, but a career that was driven on getting to the position that you're in now, which is business owner, running your own show, taking that risk and betting on yourself. Where do you think that comes from? Take us back. Like, what's the earliest Shawn hustling for independence that exists?
Yeah, so it definitely comes from my mother and sports, I think, are the two places it comes from. So when I think about hustling, when I was very young, if I had to guess an age, probably around like 10, 11, 12, I clearly remember taking a shovel when it was snowing outside and knocking on doors around the area and just, hey, I'll shovel your driveway for $10 and try. And I always had a goal, get 10 houses, make $100.
Again, something we didn't have in Manhattan.
Yes, exactly. So lots of driveways to shovel. In the fall, I would rake leaves and bag leaves and do all that stuff. But to answer your question, I always saw my mother. I was raised by a single mother, and I always saw her work 2 jobs. And I would have to get myself up for school. Luckily, I was close enough where I could actually walk to school every day at the time. And then when I'd come home, she would come home after me. And I just saw she never like talked about the importance of working hard or effort or things of that nature. But because I saw her do it, I think that kind of lit a fire under me, And then to add to that, once I got into middle school and I started playing sports, football specifically, there's a couple of I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the 30 for 30 films, where they do like documentaries on players and stuff like that. And that's where I got introduced to like some really high intensity players like Brian Dawkins, Ray Lewis, those type of personalities. And
I hope people are watching this and listen and like looking at you right now and looking at me and like the 2 guys that like wish that they were Ray Lewis and Brian Dawkins. Like,
seriously.
In case you can't tell, we're striving to be skinny white dudes, but yeah, that's fine. We're good.
Exactly. So, just hearing them talk about like effort and hard work and staying consistent, and honestly, none of the things that someone pulled me aside and told me were important when I was younger. But hearing that from someone who was successful and that I looked up to, I was like, man, maybe I should start to take these things more seriously, And honestly, between those 2 things, that is what really fired me up. And then I think there was some fear in there too. Like, I didn't grow up with money by any means. So I think a part of it too was like almost a fear of ever getting back to that place. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think another thing, which I hope you agree with, but if you don't, chime in, is there's a lot of, and I grew up a little bit differently, but in that I think, and I've mentioned this, listeners are going to hate me for just constantly mentioning this on every episode, but I believe that this is the root of keep hustling, is that the greatest influence that our parents or those that raise us have on us are the influences that they don't necessarily intend to have. Meaning,
Yeah.
your mother never sat you down and said, I'm working 2 jobs, by the way, and therefore this and that. But you
Yeah.
saw that, and I thought you were going to say when you had the fear, and that is somebody, your mother was willing to sacrifice for you, have the 2 jobs. How could you not hustle your best? Meaning, how could a person who has people who give up so much for them hustle 2 jobs, work 18 hours a day,
Mhm.
and I got to just work decently hard for 8?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like, but yet nobody said that. And that's what's interesting, is that so often the greatest influences, especially on hustle and that internal drive that we have, are not spoken. Nobody ever sits down and says, same thing with sports, by the way. Coaches may inspire, but in order for the kid to want to play high school football or pee wee football or whatever it is, you got to put in a lot of effort yourself. Nobody ever sits you down and says, by the way, this is the path to get to where you want football. So you got to put in the effort, and then they help you.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating, that I enjoy, one of the things that I'm enjoying about the podcast is that I'm hearing similar things over and over again. And as a parent, and I know you're a parent too, I found myself thinking about that. Like, I don't want to be the guy who has the direct influence when I don't need to, because my kids deserve to have fun and just like have a fun father. But every once in a while I think like, hey, I wonder how this is influencing my kids unintentionally.
Yeah, 100%. And it's tough, right? I mean, for me, I think of, there was a lot of, I call it like dark energy. Like it was a dark place to be, but a lot of good came from it, right? And I've used a lot of the things in the past to help fuel me for now and the future, And I feel like, how do I give my kids those hard times in a valuable way,
My father, he should rest in peace, always, he had a line where he said he was born in the wrong generation. He would look at us, and I think, again, I didn't grow up the same way you did, so I don't want to possibly say that I can stand in your shoes. But I think you're right. I think that at a certain point, we want our kids to build resilience.
100%.
I don't remember who it was it could be Alex Hormozy who said this, and I think you're a Hormozy guy, I think, right?
Mhm.
That I think he said, I think it was him, but if I'm miscrediting it, I apologize. That if you wanted to create the most resilient human, you wouldn't have them grow up in an ivory tower with a silver spoon. You wouldn't, because you can't teach some of that. And a lot of times the people that don't succeed, or a lot of times you hear about, family businesses that fail in the second generation. Why does it happen? Because that second generation never had to actually worry in the early days of like how the rent was going to be paid.
Mhm.
Okay, you've been through that personally and professionally. Part of why you're doing it, the irony is, part of why you're doing it is because you don't want your kids to have to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
I know, it's wild. It's wild. And it's like, to add to that too, just to bring our guy Ray Lewis back into this. He has a video where he says there's 2 sides of pain. There's one side of pain that is just full of suffering and discomfort, and then there's another side of pain which is filled with effort, it's filled with glory, and it's filled with where if you push through that pain, there's something absolutely beautiful on the other side of that. And I think most people don't push through that suffering and get to see what that beautiful side of it is. And I think, when I look back of how I was raised and grew up, honestly, it was a blessing that I went through all that, because I wouldn't be there without all that pain. You know what I mean?
100%. And also, I think it shows you that if you've gotten to where you are today, there's no reason why you can't get to where you want to be tomorrow or the next day. Meaning, it's those moments that a person can hark back to that said, well, I was in a far worse place here.
Yeah.
And now I'm worrying about, I'm worrying about the next level of my business, or, you and I often talk about, worrying about getting out of the nitty gritty or some of the mindless tasks that we try to get out of. Like, that's a great problem to have, to think about, to be able to worry about, when original conversations were about, how am I going to keep the lights on? Can I afford this lease?
Yeah.
For this business. So not to pivot to the, quickly to the professional side, but it's the same kind of thing, that even personally, my father, everyone hears a lot of quotes from him in my life and the podcast, but one of the things that I remember him vividly saying to me, and I think you'll appreciate this, is he joked about young people who said that they loved each other, and he didn't say that it wasn't that young couples didn't love each other, because that's the basis of marriage and things like that. But his joke was, after the honeymoon, when something really bad happens and there's a really big challenge and you overcome that, that's real love. Yet the person who thinks that they're in love, staring into each other's eyes on a beach in Bora Bora for their honeymoon, that's great, by the way, and everyone deserves to feel that. But it's that, like, the health scare, one of the spouses, or God forbid someone with a kid, is sleeping on a chair for 3 days in a hospital. Like, you come out of that,
It's crazy how fast your mind shift can change when something
and
like that
nobody
happens.
wants those experiences. Yet those
No.
experiences build the relationships and build the strength and build the hustle for individuals, relationships, personally and professionally. So it's,
Yeah.
I love how you said, I'm trying to figure out how to get my kids to, feel a little bit of that, because I don't know, my wife would probably kill me if my kids experienced, difficulties like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's tough to figure out. It's tough to figure out.
You then, I think, made the decision to, after high school, you were in the military for a short period of
Yep.
time?
Yeah.
What made
Yeah.
you decide to do that? Because first of all, thank you for your service, and I tell people this all
Thank
the
you.
time, a better man than I am. But, like, that's also a big leap and a big, like, a stressful, tense place to be.
Yeah. I'm just gonna be honest and say, like, at that point in time when I joined, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I tried to go the college route. I did like a semester. I thought maybe I'd be a cop or a nurse or something. I honestly had no clue.
Now you're an
And,
insurance agent.
yeah, and then an insurance agent.
Joke's on
And
you.
you're right. And then I got to a point where I'm like, man, I don't know what I want to do. And then I met someone who was in the military, and he got to travel to all these cool places and work on airplanes. And I'm like, man, that sounds kind of cool. How'd you get into that? And he told me how to get into it, and I just followed those steps and and joined. And honestly, I didn't put much thought into it, but I figured my mindset was, if I'm not going to complete college, I should do something else that's equally as hard or harder. And that's a good stepping stone. And I figured that would be a pretty good one. So I went that route, did did the boot camp and the training and all that stuff. And then I was Air National Guard for 6 years. So what was cool about that is you have a lot more flexibility. It's basically like 1 weekend a month. Every month you have to go to the base. And then it's like 2 months a year, I think it is. And then you could do some active duty days in between. Super flexible. So during that time is when I got introduced into the insurance side of things. So I don't know if you want me to dive into that, but
Yeah, I want to get there in a second. My question is, was the military and boot camp what you thought it was going to be? Or what impact did it have on you in that?
yeah, I mean, it was
You
definitely,
said you didn't know what else to do, but yet, I've seen
yeah,
movies about the Army and the military.
yeah, it was definitely harder than I thought. But the lessons I got from it were invaluable, from an attention to detail standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from an integrity standpoint. Like, there were a lot of things, teamwork, like just a lot of little intangibles that I definitely got from there, that they instill in you, that I don't think I would have gotten in college or anywhere else. So looking back at it, I don't regret it at all. And there were definitely a lot of good things that came from it. So, um, I think every branch of the military is completely different too, depending on who you talk to. So for those out there that don't know, I was in the Air Force, which some people say, boot camp's a little easier than Army and Marines and things of that nature. For me, it was difficult. I never
I
did
was eating
anything that
donuts, so
difficult
it
to
was much. Come on, yeah, much more difficult
yeah,
than eating donuts.
yeah. So, man, it was a really good experience. And it
Do
definitely
you think?
translates well to business for sure.
Do you think that more people should have experiences like that? Meaning, I think that in university, and I try to avoid the debate of whether university should disappear, but there's that
Yeah,
a person who wants to go the classroom route. Obviously, there's times that you have to, kind of grit it out, and deadlines and finals and things like that.
yeah,
But I feel like, and that obviously parlays well into a professional career, because a person can realize, oh, I can put in 40 hours over 2 days and actually
for
get this
sure.
project done, and still be able to, put coherent words together. But I feel like the school of hard knocks, or that kind of stuff, those lessons are impossible to get elsewhere.
I totally agree. I think one of the things with the military goes back to what we were speaking about before with like the two sides of pain, right? Like that forced me to do something extremely difficult. And one of the really cool like lessons that are tied into the boot camp portion specifically is that they break you down completely and then build you back up. So once you're going through all these tough trainings, waking up early every day, going to sleep late, having to pay attention to detail and take orders all day, every day. And then when you finally get to the end of boot camp, they have this cool like ceremony and you get a coin and it's just like the best feel. It's got the coin right here still. You got the best like sense of accomplishment once that's done. And you just feel like you can take on the world at that point. And I feel like that alone made it all worth it. Like, man, and again, it all ties into what we were talking about earlier. Man, if I work hard, stay consistent, and continue to push through the hard times, I'll be fine.
Do you think that too many people give up on their hustle at that hard time and therefore miss out on the glory of the good time? Meaning the person who quits on the second to last day of boot camp doesn't get that feeling that you're describing. And therefore, they won't be able to hark back to the breakdown to build up. They just feel like they've been broken down.
Yeah, I feel like I do. But I do feel like a part of the problem in today's society specifically is I think there's beautiful things that come with social media and the internet. But one of the downsides of it that I see with people my age and younger is it's too much information. So people start working on something, it gets kind of hard, and then they hear something on social that sounds super interesting, and then they go to that other thing. You know what I mean? And it's almost like let's take insurance for example. I'm doing insurance, it gets hard, and I hear Grant Cardone talk about real estate. Go in debt, go in all the debt, buy all the apartment buildings, And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, passive income. Oh, cool. And then you try that, it doesn't work, and then you hear, somebody else talk about, writing a book or whatever. And there's just so much information out there, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, it just seems like it's an issue of too much information and uncertainty
and too much access. Meaning, there was a time. And obviously, I agree with you. I think that there's so much great out of technology and social media and access, and the ability for my children to have grandparents in a foreign country and Skype with them, even though it's not the same as a personal relationship. The ability to FaceTime with them whenever they want is awesome. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think a lot of the social media challenges, especially as it relates to hustling, is it's so easy to give up. It's so easy to pivot. Our the previous generation, that doesn't mean if you choose the wrong career that you're stuck in it forever, but it means you used to have to give it a lot of thought and realize that you'd be set back really far and realize that your goals would be put on hold for longer if you didn't do that. Now people are like, great, I've been doing this for 10 years and I feel like my calling is somewhere else, or I was exposed to something and I feel like that field is better for me and better for my drive and my long-term success. This is too hard, so I'm just going to jump. And I think that part of it is exactly what you were saying, that if people don't have the ability to hark back to something that was hard, that pain of the second pain of Ray Lewis. That they went through that painful experience and they got to the other and they felt that pride, the getting of the coin at the end of boot camp. Then why not just jump every time? Because it's painful anyway. I might as well just jump. Like there's no positive end, so I might as well just kind of jump to that. I want to jump, if it's okay with you, to your professional career, and specifically. You were working a job and then you made it in the insurance industry. And I'm glad that you found our industry because we never probably would have met each other. But then you made the decision, what some would call insane decision, to go out on your own and go from somewhat stability to chaos and instability of doing everything on your own. What made you do that internally? Not, oh, my boss was not for me and I decided, like, what was there that said, this is what I want and this is the time and who cares how crazy it is?
Yeah, so around the 9 or 10 year mark of being a producer, I got to a point where I was married, started talking about a family. And the more I thought about, how is my life going to end? What does that vision look like? And the more I thought about that vision and what I wanted it to be, the more I realized I had to go out on my own and build my own company. And could I have done that as a producer? Maybe, but there was just something to building my own company, having a team, helping other people succeed that really excited me. And I knew at the bottom of my heart, if I didn't do it, I would be filled with regret the day that, I'm going to be no longer here. So I just knew that I had to do it. I didn't want that regret. I was petrified of the regret. And then, I'm talking about other influencers here, but Will Smith had a video before he went crazy. He had this video of basically it was a video that's titled, I'm pretty sure it's titled Just Decide. And basically it talks about like the redemptive power of having a choice, right? Like who you're going to be, what you're going to do, how you're going to get there. Like, and I remember the video, it's like, just decide. The universe is going to get out of your way once you have that singular focus and you just decide. And that kind of ties into what we spoke about before with too much information and doing too many things at once. Like I thought, wow, if I put all my focus and all my power into this one thing, the universe is going to get out of my way. And that's it's crazy to say out loud, but that's kind of how I thought about it. And to your point, like it wasn't an easy conversation with my wife either. I had to tell her, hey, we're going from a 6-figure salary to 0. I don't own my book. I'm starting completely scratch, but we're going to make it work.
And here's the vision. Meaning, I think that a lot of times, and we talk about keep hustling and we talk about defining and redefining people's hustle. And that's a moment where you redefine your hustle. You said, I'm not going to hustle being a producer. I want to be a business owner. But here's why I think I can succeed. And here's why I'm taking this moment right now to redefine what I want and how I want to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that very often, and I am knocked because I'm the keep hustling guy for promoting what people think is an unhealthy hustle culture. And I have never once said that. I believe that the very definition of keep hustling is making that calculated decision, realizing it's going to be hard, realizing that if X, Y, and Z go right, and that's not a miracle that it goes right, that, in the natural order, this goes right. And by the way, those who love me the most are supporting it. Then how could you say that a few sleepless nights or taking the leap of faith is irresponsible or unhealthy? Okay, unhealthy physically for a little while, sure. But I promise that you've done more. I'm not going to speak about you, I'll speak on me. I've done more unhealthy things in my life than hustle really hard professionally for 2 months and sleep very little and drink too much coffee. So that's...
Yeah, and I listen, I think I love that you said that too. And I do think like hard work is like the prerequisite to like be at the top of your game, right? Like that's just one thing you need to do right. You have to be able to improve and build your skills, and you have to also have personal development. You have to invest in yourself. And I feel like if you just have the hard work,
but I think also realizing that there's the short bursts of really painful, difficult, long days
100%.
with the understanding and the goal that the vision is not to be there forever. Meaning everybody has deadlines in their lives. Everybody, accountants have tax day.
Yeah.
But no accountant could survive if tax day was every day. And nobody should choose that as a career if that's how they feel.
Yeah.
But I think it's just fascinating to me when I speak to people who started their own businesses. I did not. That they actually have the most successful of those, yourself included, actually gave the thought, had the conversations, said to those around them who love them, who they love, listen, this is going to be a crazy 3, 6, 12, 15, however you want to look at it, months. But my vision is that 24 months from now, we're going to look back and say, hopefully I'll never have to do that again. Okay, the day before a big renewal or a big prospect or whatever, yeah, so you can stay in the office till midnight. But no, I don't think it should be anybody's goal that 2:00 in the morning, they're sitting there every single night the same way you were day 3 of the business.
Yeah.
So how do you manifest that?
I mean, honestly, I don't. To create the vision, honestly, is one of the hardest things to do. For me, it was one of the hardest things to do. So my thing is write it down, right?
I know I see you taking a lot of notes. I love it.
Oh yeah, write it down. Understand the vision's going to change. especially me. I'm 35 years old. My vision changes every couple of years, especially once you have kids, right? So write down the vision, know where you want to go, right? Because that's going to help you push through the hard times. So that's kind of what, like, anytime stuff gets really rough, I just remember in the back of my head, Shawn, remember the size of agency you want to build. Remember the people you want to help along the way. Remember the legacy you want to leave for your family. And that'll help push you through those hard times, And again, let's bring up the painting again. You push through the hard time, and then you push through that difficult workout that you didn't want to do, that you woke up early for. And guess what? You feel amazing. You're happier the rest of the day. You help out, you're more helpful with the family. You're happier with your wife. You're happier with the kids. So that's how I manifest it, is I have it written down. I try to look, it sounds crazy, but I try to look at it at least once a day just to try to refresh it in my mind,
And do you like look at it every morning, or just like when that moment hits, it's kind of just sitting there for you in that vision?
In the morning is usually, again, it changed once I had kids, but
I also please do not mention what time you wake up in the morning. I will not, that'll be edited out of this podcast, because those hours eyes should not see those hours.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's what works. The kids aren't awake yet. The wife is sleeping. I get my little alone time. It's the time I have a lot of time to myself. So that's when I like to do my reading, my working out, reflecting on goals, vision, all that stuff.
Do you think that sometimes people sell themselves short on vision and don't dream big enough?
Yeah, 100%. I'm one of those people. I had a coaching call with Dan Martell a few months ago, and he said, "Shawn, what's your revenue goal for the year for your business?" And I told him 100,000, and he goes, 100,000 new revenue. He's like, "Oh, great, yeah, let's make it 200,000." And my initial thought was, how the hell am I going to do that? Like, how am I going to do 200? I'm trying to hit 100. That's a big goal for me, And then the more I sat on it and thought about it, and he's like, "Hey, just how would you get there? Let's just say it's possible. How are you going to get there? By the next meeting, let me know how you're going to get there." And I wrote it all out, how I'm going to get there. And guess what? This year, we're on pace to do more than 200,000. And it was all...
Amen to that.
It was all mindset.
I saw I think I mentioned it before on the podcast, I saw an amazing video. You probably saw it too, because we're in I feel like our scrolls look the same with motivation. Imagine how big you would dream if you knew you couldn't fail. And yes, we don't have those guarantees. We can fail, but that doesn't mean that we should dream less. So,
yeah.
Shawn,
that's a good point.
You inspire me. I love seeing your posts at 4:00 in the morning when I get up much later, that you've worked out. Dues paid, I think, is what you post. So I'm just rolling out of bed and making coffee at that point. So I appreciate you. We end, and I really appreciate you making the time. I know you're super busy. We end every episode by asking our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational, inspirational quote, what it means to them and to their hustle. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you and say thank you again, Shawn Fitzgerald, for joining us.
Aaron, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. What you're doing, from a consistency standpoint of running a podcast, I know is super difficult. Having an insurance for myself, it's not easy to do. The consistency is honestly the hardest part, finding guests and all that stuff. So it's super inspirational to watch you and some of the guests you've had on and the work that I know you've put into this. So thanks for doing what you're doing, man. It's inspirational. And as far as a favorite quote goes, I got one right behind me on the whiteboard here. Victory is reserved for those willing to pay its price.
That's it. Keep hustling. That's it.
That's it.
Pain. Shawn Fitzgerald. Thank you. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good, and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.